We are Red Star Report. This is Voices for the California Nation, and let's recap, shall we, for those who just joined us. Although the idea of a free and independent California republic can historically trace its origins to 1836, when Juan Bautista Alvarado posted California's first declaration of independence for Mexico and raised the lone Red Star flag over the old capital of Monterrey, as a modern movement, it didn't really begin to gain traction until 2015 in the initial run-up to the 2016 election, as Donald Trump became first the Republican frontrunner and eventually won the 2016 election. In fact, the day after Donald Trump's first election victory, Cal exit sites recorded tens of thousands of hits, and even the Democratic leaders of the California State Senate and Assembly released a joint statement in which they said they woke up feeling like strangers in a foreign land. A post-election wake-up call to America's anti-progressive nature that fueled poll numbers for a fledgling #CalExit movement from the low 20s to as high as 37% within weeks of Trump's first inauguration. Poll numbers that would begin seeing comparisons to the Yes Scotland movement and later Brexit, as Donald Trump's anti-California rhetoric, attitudes, and policies became more toxic, and California officials began openly using CalExit's fifth largest economy in the world talking point, driving the number of Californians polled who said they wouldn't oppose California secession to almost 4.5 out of 10 before the 2020 election gave California Democrats the appearance of a return to an imaginary American centrist normalcy. Shame on you for that, by the way, because it was never meant to be. With a severely partisan conservative Supreme Court already in place, an almost unbreakable conservative lock on the majority of U.S. states, GOP control of both houses of Congress, and now a Donald Trump re-election with a preloaded plan to remake America as the most California values hostile country possible, Californians are beyond any reasonable doubt living in an America that will not hesitate to aggressively pursue programs to inflict suffering on people they've already dismissed as domestic enemies. A point not only already illustrated in Donald Trump's unsympathetic reactions to the LA wildfires, along with policies all but flatly stated in his own inauguration speech, but in the calls for a vibrant, active, and organized California resistance, asking, why do Californians send taxes to a federal government that won't even help Californians during a natural disaster? And with the calls for a #NewCalExit serving as the ultimate statement of resistance gaining traction on social media sites reminiscent of the CalExit groundswell of 2016, all bets on politics as usual are off. This is Voices for the California Nation.
The ultimate resistance to U.S. fascism is California independence.
For Pacifica News, I'm Hal Lohr with the Pacifica News Update. In one of his final acts as president on Monday, Joe Biden commuted the life sentence of Native American rights activist Leonard Peltier, convicted of killing 2 FBI agents on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in 1975. Peltier, who is 80 years old, has been imprisoned for almost 5 decades and has been in declining health in recent years from diabetes, hypertension, partial blindness from a stroke, and bouts of COVID. In a statement provided by the NDN Collective, an indigenous-led advocacy organization, Peltier said he was ready to leave prison. "It's finally over. I'm going home," Peltier said. "I want to show the world I'm a good person with a good heart." Last July, the U.S. Parole Commission had denied Peltier's latest bid for release, which left his fate in the hands of Biden. Peltier has long maintained his innocence, and his commutation is set to draw fierce opposition from members of law enforcement, as Biden's commutation came just minutes before President Donald Trump took office for a second term. A reminder that President Trump did not act on Peltier's clemency request during his first term, declining to intervene. In a statement, Kevin Sharp, the attorney who advocated for Peltier's parole, praised President Biden, who he said had taken enormous steps towards healing and reconciliation with the Native American people in this country, lamenting that it took nearly 50 years to acknowledge the injustice of Leonard Peltier's conviction and continued incarceration. But with the president's act of mercy, Leonard can finally return to his reservation and live out his remaining days. According to The Hill, even as Donald Trump was sworn into office, it was already announced that his first official presidential trip will be to Southern California to tour the wildfire-devastated areas. Trump is expected to arrive later in the week after ignoring climate change's obvious role in the crisis, which was created by ongoing drought conditions and hurricane-force winds, which caused multiple wildfires throughout greater Los Angeles. Instead of this recognition, Trump has spent most of his time blaming California's leadership for mismanagement as the cause of the crisis, famously calling for Governor Gavin Newsom to resign because, in Trump's opinion, this is all his fault. Meanwhile, The Hollywood Reporter reminds us that although federal funding packages for states, particularly along the East Coast, hit by natural disasters such as hurricanes are typically approved without conditions, this is not the usual for California wildfires. In the case of the LA wildfires, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has already said there should probably be conditions on federal aid, echoing past GOP talking points where Speaker Johnson and other GOP leaders, including Donald Trump, have long singled out California's Democratic leadership for its handling of wildfires, while wildfire victims await FEMA relief. Last week, outgoing President Joe Biden assured the nation that the federal government would cover 100% of the costs for the initial wildfire recovery efforts for 180 days. But President-elect Trump floated the idea last week of including federal aid to Los Angeles as a contingency of a massive reconciliation package on Trump's political agenda for border wall construction, extending Trump's tax cuts, raising the current debt limit without negotiation with the Democratic Party, and boosting the fossil fuel industry while undoing policies that favor electric vehicles. Democrats in Washington are pushing back, accusing Republicans of exploiting the disaster and holding wildfire victims hostage to score political points. After the fires initially broke out in the Pacific Palisades, blazes continued to erupt across Los Angeles County, while first responders have fought night and day to contain the flames. More than 12,000 homes, buildings, and structures have been destroyed, and at least 25 people have died. At midnight on Sunday, TikTok users in the United States were momentarily silenced after the Supreme Court unanimously upheld a new law which requires the social media app's Chinese owner to sell off TikTok's U.S. business or face a nationwide ban. Within hours of the shutdown, however, Donald Trump announced plans to issue an executive order that would grant ByteDance, TikTok's Chinese parent company, a 90-day extension to locate an approved buyer before the popular video-sharing platform goes dark permanently. TikTok immediately announced that it was in the process of restoring the platform with an assurance to service providers that they will face no penalties, providing TikTok to over 170 million Americans and allowing over 7 million small businesses to thrive. By mid-morning Sunday, the app was back online. The ban, as enacted, would and may still make it illegal for app stores such as Apple and Google Play to distribute TikTok or issue updates to the social media app. Providers that don't abide the law could face civil penalties of $5,000 per user. Facing a shutdown, millions of the app users expressed disbelief, sadness, anger, and defiance, with many posting farewell messages and mock funerals, while critics have argued that this is a blow to free speech. TikTok's viability has been uncertain since then-President Trump moved to shut it down in 2020, citing national security concerns, raising the prospect that TikTok owner ByteDance could be working with the Chinese government by sharing collected user data, spreading anti-U.S. disinformation, or embedding malicious software in the app. But 4 years later, numerous businesses have argued that TikTok was a crucial alternative to Instagram and YouTube Shorts that helped grow their brand and drive commerce. Before leaving office, President Biden had emphasized that he had not planned to enforce the ban before the new administration took office. But for now, ByteDance has a 90-day reprieve to settle the legal questions before the nationwide ban takes effect. So for now, it's the clock that's going tick-tock, tick-tock. This has been a Pacifica News Update. I'm Hal Lohr, and we return you to your regular programming.
The power of human beings to affect and control and change the environment is growing as our technology grows. And at present time, we clearly have reached the stage where we are capable, both intentionally and inadvertently, to make significant changes in the global climate and in the global ecosystem. And we've probably been doing, on a smaller scale, things like that for a very long period of time. For example, slash and burn agriculture is an example of how humans are perfectly capable of making these unexpected and inadvertent changes. Because the effects occupy more than a human generation, there is a tendency to say that they are not our problem. Of course, then they are nobody's problem. Not on my tour of duty, not on my term of office. It's something for the next century. Let the next century worry about it. But the problem is that there are effects, and the greenhouse effect is one of them, which have long time constants. If you don't worry about it now, it's too late later on. And so in this issue, as in so many other issues, we are passing on extremely grave problems for our children when the time to solve the problems, if they can be solved at all, is now. Here is a problem which transcends our particular generation. It is an intergenerational problem. If we don't do the right thing now, there are very serious problems that our children and grandchildren will have to face. I think that what is essential for this problem is a global consciousness, a view that transcends our exclusive identifications with the generational and political groupings into which by accident we have been born. The solution to these problems requires a perspective that embraces the planet and the future, because we are all in this greenhouse together.
This is Talking Points, and we told you so. Because as President Donald Trump was sworn in to his second term on Monday, complete with multiple speeches on unity sprinkled with threats of retribution on corporate media sites, all too eager to please, it makes you wonder if many Californians actually felt the hairs on the back of their necks stand up as they watched Trump's inauguration descend into a MAGA America victory lap. Because then executive orders dropped like leaves in a storm, remaking American society in ways that trashed political evolution that could take generations to recover from, if that's even possible in such a divisive America. Because for Donald Trump's supporters, broken democracy is exactly what they want as the start of a new era, with Trump proclaiming the golden age of America begins right now. A decidedly devolved, oligarchy-driven, if not outright fascist America, to be built on liberal tears and over the grave of the progressive values held by a supermajority of Californians. A Christo-conservative golden age where those people that flyover America doesn't like, and of course people who have crossed fearless leader Trump in the past, like Californians who voted against him, must face a future of uncertainty and fear. To do this, Trump promised that 100 executive orders would be signed on his first day, and even put a desk inside Capital One Arena to sign many of them in front of a cheering MAGA hat crowd, rolling out a totally not 2025 Project telegraphed plan to weaponize America's barely veiled racist federal immigration policies and crush all progress toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. Trump declared a national emergency to close legal immigration, including programs for refugees and seeking to end birthright citizenship, guaranteed under the 14th Amendment. That's a white nationalist cause driven by fears that a majority white America may begin to resemble a majority non-white California, in a move that trumpets a new Christo-conservative federal acceptance of forced gender roles with ominous connotations for California's gay community as a whole. Trump also stated that there are only two sexes, and it will be U.S. policy to erase transgender people from public life, with no U.S. passports, visas, or other government-related records issued without a sex-at-birth designation. And of course, in an ironic twist for an inauguration day that was also Martin Luther King Day, Donald Trump drove the last nail in federal affirmative action's coffin with a dog whistle promise for an end to diversity, equity, and inclusion in favor of a society that is colorblind and merit-based. Yeah, that. So, where's the California independence talking point in all this? Just this. The California independence movement's existence is based around many California college professors, scholars, and political activists who have been warning Californians of how broken America would become for over a decade now. But issuing Californians an "I told you so" is useless if we can't get people to consider the alternatives to the never-ending struggle for the lost American soul.